This is the Great Alaska Hunting Podcast. I'm Dalton Gray.
And I'm Ryan Humphreys.
Broadcasting from our hometown of Fairbanks, Alaska. This show is brought to you by StHealthy Hunter. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show.
Again, I was shooting a Browning A-bolt, which is a fairly short magazine.
Yeah.
And, of course, the X bullets were long. And 300 grainers, I was using up so much case capacity that I couldn't get the velocities that was wanting.
Yeah.
So I just went with 270s and had them cheated out max. I even shaved the front of the magazines off.
Yeah.
A couple of thousands.
Yeah.
But a round nose bullet in a 375, totally adequate. I mean, I love round nose bullets. You're not paying a premium for an insanely accurate bullet.
Yeah.
I've never shot them in any rifle caliber ever that they didn't shoot as well as anything else out to 200 yards. And they're super easy. They're so tolerant. Like the 6.5 160 Hornady, the old ones, they changed them after the 260 came out, but the ones that were made for the Swedes, they were a bore riding bullet. You cannot screw them up. They're insanely accurate. I used to shoot sporting rifle match with 160 grain round nose bullets.
Out of a 6.5 Swede.
And they would shoot a dime at 100 yards. And you can't really screw them up. You know? I mean, you seat them to factory length and crimp them and shoot them, and they shoot fantastic.
Light crimp, or were you a pretty heavy crimper on your reloads?
No, I just want a consistent crimp for the pullout.
Yeah.
If you got, I mean, I'm no physicist, but I was shooting very random brass. I wasn't buying Lapua brass. I was grabbing whatever was laying on the ground. And you're mixing Federal with Remington with Winchester, and they're all different metallurgies. So if I don't crimp them, there's definite difference in pullout. If I'm seating them to the cantilever and giving them a uniform crimp, the pullout's pretty uniform. I did a lot of testing, just crude testing, but it's really close, and it showed on the paper. And it's simple. And round nose bullets perform fantastic. You're getting premium performance out of the cheapest bullet on the market.
Yeah.
So, as long as I'm not shooting super high velocity, which I don't anymore anyway, like 30-06, I shoot a 220 round nose Hornady. I load them to max, seat them factory or a little out, but to the cantilever, edge of it, crimp it. I do uniform my brass now, and I do 3/4 neck size it. But other than that, and I'll guarantee you, 3 of my 30-06s all shoot under an inch with a round nose bullet. And I don't shoot past 200 yards, so I don't care.
Right. Well, we'll go ahead and just kick off right here.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Great Alaska Hunting Podcast, everybody. I'm Dalton Gray.
I'm Ryan Humphreys.
And joined this week by our friend Tom. Thanks for joining us, Tom.
You're welcome.
You have been a guide up here in Alaska for a number of years, and you've acquired a number of interesting stories, and I've known about you for some time, and we've had the chance to chit-chat here and there, and so I'm excited to have you on here and have you put some of these stories out there for folks to hear. So.
Well, there'll be a lot of people don't want to hear.
Well, I guess let's just go ahead and there's one just quick thing here, just what we've been up to. You and I have been doing some reloading.
We have been.
Went to the range today.
We did.
Shooting copper bullets.
Shooting all copper, yeah.
All coppers.
I'm a big fan.
We're getting ready to go deer hunting here in just a short amount of time. By the time this comes out, it'll be deer season by then.
Yeah.
But yeah, got a load worked up for his 6mm arc. He's going all fancy with an AR gun this year. Yeah. Deer hunting.
Oh yeah. There's nothing more traditional than walking around in the woods with an assault rifle.
In one variant or another. I mean, 100 years ago, it was a Springfield. 30-06 was an assault rifle, so things have just changed. But I got some of the 145 grain Hammer HHTs,
I've heard a lot of good things about the hammers, and I'm actually going to try them for a friend's creed.
Yeah. So Mo and I have been working with hammer for a few years now, working with Steve down there. They're an interesting design in that they're designed to go in a little bit and then shed their petals. So like a Barnes is meant to retain those petals all the way through penetration, but the hammers are designed so that there's rapid, dramatic expansion. Then the petals come off, and then the squared off shank continues to penetrate in a straight line. I've used them on brown bears, deer, caribou, a few different bears that we've shot as well here in the interior, just black bears. But I've shot them in a few different calibers, and now I've got one. The load we decided is going to work today is the 145 grain, and it's going
in a hammer. Is 145?
Yeah, 145, and using H1000, it's cooking along pretty good.
What caliber rifle?
7 mag.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
20. Good grief.
Yeah, 24-inch barrel. So
a 7 mag with a 145.
Yeah,
for deer.
Yep.
They're a lot bigger than I recall.
Yeah.
Good grief, man.
Yeah, they're zipping along pretty quick, but this load ought to work well for caribou, sheep, black bear.
It's got to be, 3,100 plus?
Yeah, I think the loading I think the charge weight that I'm going to go with is going to be right about 31, maybe just a touch under, but it's definitely a little much for those deer.
So part of the reason I'm taking the AR and a 6 ARC is because I had it, and I was taking a 300 short mag with a 168
for deer
doing 3150. It's too much gun.
I'm going to loan you a muzzle loader.
And so I'm taking a 6 ARC with 88 grain going, what is that? What was it going? 26?
Yeah, 26-ish.
Yeah, well, the ARCs are good shooters. I mean, and I like 6mm for deer anyway.
Yeah.
But I got to be honest, I don't see the point in going with a copper bullet for a deer.
Yeah, but there's also brown bears on the table too.
Yeah, and that's when you're really going to wish you didn't have a 6mm.
Yeah.
That's what the 10mm is for too.
No, that's what you got a shark bang stick for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these new calibers, I've just basically ignored them unless a friend has one and they want me to work up loads for them. Because everything I got already does everything I need it to.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're fun. That 6 Grindle, that's bad. That's sweet shooting. But if you got 5,000 243 brass, I ain't buying one.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
Yeah. The 243 might be making this deer hunt as well. It might be coming along.
Yours?
Yeah, I might.
Well, it's just really hard to beat.
Yeah.
You know, for deer.
Yeah.
And there was an old fish cop out in Cody, Wyoming, a million years ago. Lived on a horse and always had a rifle in his scabbard. And he'd shot several charging grizzlies over his career. And that was when there wasn't hardly any grizzlies. But all he carried was a pre-64 Model 70 with no scope and a 243.
Yeah.
And you head shoot them with 243, they're just as dead as if you shoot them with a 416.
Yep.
But, you know, I mean, when it comes down to all the fancy stuff, it's really fun. And if you can afford it, why not?
Yeah.
But practical, buy an .6.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My wife is likely going to bring her .6 because she's coming along with us deer hunting as well.
And she's practical.
well, yeah.
And she shoots the .6 well. You know, last year I shot my deer with the .6. I shot a couple of them with it. I ended up head shooting both of them with that .6. No, the one out of the two of them I shot with. Right. I shot in the head.
Oh, and then I shot one in the head.
Yeah. But, you know, the .6, a little bit lower velocity, not nearly as much meat damage. But this year she's going to be there. She wasn't there last year. And so I have the 7 mag, and it shoots well, and I kind of like the gun.
Yeah,
so.
You know, I mean, it was designed for a 145 grain bullet at 3,100 feet per second. Everybody knows that. I mean, I like 7 mag. I've shot a lot of them. You shoot 1,000 yards with them.
Yeah.
Only thing I don't like about a 7 mag, especially when you're cranking them like that, is I can't afford to replace barrels anymore because my gunsmith uncle's dead. But, you know, you're talking that hot, 800 rounds. I've shot that in a week. You know, and barrels aren't $280 anymore, and I'm not getting them replaced free or set back for free. So
right.
There ain't no way I'm cranking that.
Yeah.
But I just worked up loads for a new X-Bolt Heavy Hunter. It's that Target version.
Yeah.
And we were cranking 180 burgers at quarter minute of angle right at 2900 with H4831 shortcut.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're shooting those super premium bullets, first of all, you have to if you want that kind of accuracy. But it's like, I almost had to buy another 7 mag. I mean, it was just so much fun, you know. I mean, dialing in a gun from brand new to consistently shooting sub half.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
But for hunting,
a
3 minute angle gun
right,
with factory bullets will do it all.
Yeah.
It's just no fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's where we are kind of with the hammers too. It's
Yeah,
like we like them. We like the way they perform. They shoot really well and they're easy to load for.
Yeah. Well, that's what I've been hearing. For monolithic, they're exceptionally accurate.
They are
for a hunting bullet,
and they're super easy to load for. I mean, you shot
very easy
4 different
charge weights,
and I mean, you were what, inch and a half?
Yeah.
At 100.
Yeah. 4 different charge weights and 3 of each, which is not a real good tester, you know.
It's not a test, but it's still
right.
It gives you
you get a false sense of security.
Yeah, exactly. But it was just kind of looking for that pressure area, right? And I don't have an exorbitant amount of H1000 just laying around.
Right.
But, you know, just 4 different charge weights of 3 each, and they all shot within an inch of each other, right? And so that overall is not real bad.
I have a whole bunch of Stay-Ball HD, and I'd be happy to let you try some, and I think you'd be really happy.
Someone just told me, I was actually just talking to Mo about Stay-Ball HD, that they said it was real similar to something like Rotumbo.
And 1000.
Yeah.
H1000.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that'd be a good one to try.
And what
It's
I
a lot
like,
cheaper too.
well, and in some cases it's a lot more available, but I reload so much that if anything comes in ball powder, I'm going to try it because I can drop it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I weigh every single load, even if I'm just screwing off anyway. But if I can drop it and it's 2 twists on the trickler or a quarter twist, it's a lot faster. You know, anytime I'm shooting stick, it's
right.
You know, I've been shooting a lot of stay ball match, 6.5, not so much HD. I did try it. It wasn't working in the application. What it's made for, I think it'd be very good.
Yeah. I use Stay-Ball 6.5 in my hand loads for my 375 Ruger, shooting a 270 grain hammer. And out of a 20-inch barrel, it was going 27, 25, 27.50.
All my experience so far with the 6.5, not the match, but is 100 feet per second above everything else I can load.
Yeah.
In the old days, when you could get reloaders, Reloader 22 was kind of that powder. I just basically had to forget about it because I haven't even seen any for years.
Yeah.
But the 6.5, I was getting better velocities out of that 7 mag I was talking about. With the 6.5, I just couldn't get the consistency.
Yeah.
I was getting, and again, you know, I mean, there's so many variables involved that you kind of trick yourself. Even when you're shooting good groups, they might be misses.
Yeah.
You know, unless you're shooting 30 round groups or 50 round groups or whatever. You could be getting fantastic groups with one powder and okay groups with another powder. And then when you jump it up to, you know, 30 round tests, all of a sudden they're backwards.
Yeah.
You're just getting lucky.
Yeah.
But what I couldn't do with the 6.5 is ever get a good group. I would get like 4-shot group in the same hole and a 1-inch flyer. Over and over and over. And then with the H4831, I'm shooting through the same hole all day long. Now, is it me? Very possibly. But that's not what I'm seeing.
Interesting.
But with my .6 and with the Creedmoors, the 6.5 is really turning out good.
Interesting.
I tried that Stay-Ball 6.5 in a 30-30. And I wasn't getting that velocity.
Would totally be the wrong powder.
Yeah, I found some load data for it, so I tried it, and it just wasn't.
You should have tried the match.
I did. I ended up using 335 H335. I think.
Always a good powder.
Yeah, it worked out real well. I'm using the match in my 6 arc though. I like it in that.
Yeah, you're shooting a good group today.
Yeah,
with those loads.
Yeah, the Stay-Ball powders. I mean, the biggest thing for me right now is they're available.
They are.
Yeah. Yeah,
And when
for
I
sure.
see them, I buy lots.
There's a
Yeah.
bunch. There's a bunch at Sportsman's right now.
Is there?
The 6.5 and the match. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen either one there, but
They have 8.
oh, that's not true. They had 8-pound
yeah,
cans.
yeah.
Well, I guess let's just kind of start from the beginning, Tom. You've been in Alaska for how many years now?
Well, 32, I guess, in March or April. I came up in 92 the first time, but I moved up in 93.
Where was home prior to that?
North central Iowa, a little dinky town of 700. Just farm community. Grew up basically a town farm kid, hunting, trapping. My uncle and my father were semi-professional trappers, and
Trapping what?
well, early on it was fox. This is back in the bounty days. Fox, mink, a lot of muskrats through the ice. Raccoons had no value back then. There were no coyotes. My dad got his picture on the front page of the local paper for tracking down and shooting a coyote. They didn't even call them coyotes. They called them brush wolves. But my dad and my uncle, they had started trapping as kids during the Depression, basically saved our farm. They were able to pay their taxes with their mink money. As kids, they paid for the farm taxes. There was no money in farming. And as they got older, there was exceptional trappers in the state of Iowa. Craig, J. Curtis Gregg, and Bill Nelson. He's the founding father of modern predator trapping. And my uncle and dad took instruction from him. And so they were exceptionally good trappers. I was very lucky. And at that time, there was still a lot of old World War I, World War II vets, and they were all hunters. And my dad was I was extremely enthusiastic, even real little. So Dad just introduced me to these old guys. My best friend when I was 12 years old was a World War I vet. You know, he's the only guy in town with a center fire rifle bigger than a 243. He had a 270 pump Remington. He's the only guy that had hunted big game that I knew. He'd shot antelope and mule deer. And he had one of those, what are they, 75 records, the little records.
Oh, yeah.
Of a moose calling record from some guy in Canada with a birch bark cow call.
Yeah.
One side of the record was cow calling, the other side was bull calling. I must have sat in his old chair and listened to that thing 1,000 times. There wasn't a moose within 500 miles of where I was from. But he was just he taught me how to reload at 12 years old. We sat in his basement, and he had a great horned owl. He was a fantastic crow caller. I mean, with his voice.
Yeah.
And they were bounty back then, or at least prior to that. He could call crows while he was riding a tractor and have them circling the tractor. I mean, he would shoot hundreds and hundreds of crows, and everybody was broke and cheap back then, you know. So he had been mustard gas, so he couldn't get around very good. So I was kind of his legs. And I mean, as soon as I get out of school or during the summer, I was out there. And old Holiday gas station shotgun shells, they were blue. And he would reload them for me. And that got interesting because he'd double drop them. And I had an old Ivor Johnson 12-gauge single shot. I remember being out squirrel hunting one day with it. And normally I hunted with 22, but I had a whole bunch of shotgun shells and not a lot of 22 shells. So squirrel's sitting there, and I shoot, and I watch my shot come out of the barrel, fall right in front of me. And I'd never had that happen before. You know, I'm just a kid. I thought, that's weird. And I look in the barrel, and the wad's stuck. So I had to cut a willow and knock the wad out. Well, I should have thought, if there's not any in that one, there might be double in the next one. Well, there was. I was shooting at a squirrel almost straight up in a tree on the edge of a ravine. I leaned back, and it was looking over the branch at me, and I pulled the trigger, and it drove me right down the ravine. I got him. But that's the kind of people I was around. I had an uncle that was, a fantastic gunsmith. It wasn't his job, but he was really good at it. And he was he was like our local hunter safety instructor. Everybody knew him, and he was my godparent. So anything about guns, I had him to go to, and anything about hunting or trapping, I had other people to go to. So I was just very fortunate.
Yeah. And then how'd you end up coming to Alaska?
Well, I was a farrier. I had, out of high school, I was shoeing horses. Then on a dare, I went in the Army for 4 years in the infantry and got out of that, went back to horseshoeing and had my left foot broke twice in 1 year. And I'd always wanted to see Alaska, but I hadn't. I thought, if I want to be able to get around, I better do it while I'm young.
Yeah. You broke your foot getting stepped on by a horse?
Yeah. 1 foot once. That summer, I had the left foot broke twice in a row. Anyway, I just got on the airplane. I looked at a map about this big of Alaska, and there was Anchorage, Fairbanks. So I went to Fairbanks. Did no research, got off the airplane. I didn't know where it was.
And this is in 92?
This was fall of 92, yeah. That was the year Mount Spur blew up, and then that early blizzard.
Yeah.
I was here for all of it. But anyway, I went back to Iowa, decided I wanted to live here for 2 years in the bush. Didn't know anybody. I'd met Randy Zarkey over at Fish and Game.
Okay.
And so I just said, heck with it. I just shut down shop in Iowa, jumped in the truck, drove up here. Cousin rode with me. And he was going to stay too, but he was in love, and he got here about 2 days and couldn't take it and flew back. And I just walked back into Zarkey and said, hey, anybody's got any cabins out in the bush? They might want somebody to babysit. And he sent me over to Lascaraw Fur, which was incredibly fortunate for me. I mean, Joe's still one of my best friends. And he introduced me almost immediately to an old guy I guided with the whole time I've been up here, Sandy. And within a few days of getting to Fairbanks, I was on the Salmon Fork of the Black River, 75 air miles from Circle City for the entire summer. They set me up with another old guy that was a trapper that wanted to partner for the winter. And I was in Fairbanks 2 days that fall. And then I went back out trapping with this old friend of mine, Steve, and stayed out till the end of March. Came to town for, I don't know, maybe a month, working with Sandy on a log job. And then I went back out to Salmon Fork. Stayed there through the summer. And that was basically my 2 years. I'd already kind of in my head decided, well, I'll just go back horseshoeing. And I drove back to Iowa that fall, and within a month, I'd already decided I couldn't stay, and I've been here ever since.
You just liked it that much?
I don't know. I mean, my biggest draw to Alaska is places I haven't been. And there's lots of them.
Yeah.
And now after 31 and a half years, I've been to a lot of places, and I ain't even made a footprint in this state. I've been thousands of days in the bush, and I haven't seen anything. Most people that live here their whole lives, I saw more the first month I was here than they will.
Yeah, yeah.
And I still haven't seen it. The one thing I got to admit, though, I don't really like going back to the same places. Even though it's convenient, you know what you're getting into. You probably got stuff stashed. You might have a cabin. But you're looking at the same old tree.
Yeah.
And there's 10 billion trees. Why not look at a different one?
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to find a new spot. And then, I started guiding about the third year, I guess I was up here. Back then, you only had to take a test. And you had to be here for a couple of years. Maybe you had to hunt big game once or something. I don't remember. But you just took some stupid 100-question test. You were a guide, and I was already hooked up with Sandy, so he put me to work right away. Because, very few people are comfortable being out in the bush by themselves for extended periods of time. So it didn't take very long for everybody to be pretty confident I'm not going to freak out. I was Boy Scout master right out of high school. My Boy Scouts were at the Governor's Youth Achievement Award for the state of Iowa. I never let them use a tent ever. And I'm still in contact with a bunch of them kids, But I got to say, though, the very first hunt I guided, I was super excited.
Yeah.
And Sandy had to talk me in to get my license. Because I'd done a little bit in Colorado, and I was really disgusted with it. But he told me it's all Germans. They're great guys. You should try it. And I'm like, I don't know. He said, Tom, think of it this way. It's more of a challenge. You're a competent hunter. But if you take a guy that's not, it becomes more of a challenge to get him some. And I fell for the bait. And my very first client, he was a wonderful old German guy named Carl. And he was in his 80s. He'd hunted all over Canada and Alaska already.
Yeah.
I think that's why Sandy stuck me with him. He really didn't care. All he wanted was a black bear. This was August hunt. Sandy flew me in first, and it was where a big oxbow on a fairly large river was, a dry oxbow. And a smaller river came in right above there. That was a salmon river. So the river's full of chums back then in August. They were just, eddies were full of them. And as we're flying in over this oxbow, it's probably 40 acres of blueberries with 7 bears in the middle of the afternoon as we're flying in. And so I'm like, oh, this is going to be nothing to it, Set up a wall tent, sleep tent, my little pup tent, and in comes Carl. He couldn't care less if he shot a bear. He brought a case of cigars, 5 bottles of cognac, wine. And I couldn't even get him to, he couldn't hunt that first night, but I couldn't even get him to go over 75 yards away to look. He's like, nah, I'm good. I'm like, oh no, And I had a little wired fox terrier that quite famous, but he was blood trail trained, and he went with me. He was perfectly trained. He went everywhere. Carl loved him. He'd sit in his lap, and he'd say, no, let's not go hunting. Barney needs a nap. I'm like, oh. Well, anyway, it's August, so it's not getting dark super early.
Yeah.
First night, I'd built this cool little wickie up out of willows with camouflage tarp, so if it rained, and it's looking out over this huge patch of blueberries. And we get out. I finally get him to go over there about 6 o'clock in the evening. We sit there for a couple hours, and a couple little bears are out. He'd shot like 7 bears already. I only want a big one. So it's 8:30. He's got a big fancy watch, an old dial watch. He looks at 8:30, Tom. I'm like, yeah, we're done. I'm like, what? And he's done. He's up getting his stuff, and it's only 75 yards across the slough to the camp. We get back, and I'm like, what? The bears ain't even out yet.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, we're done. It's 8:30. I must have my cognac. And he has a big cognac and lights a cigar, and I'm like, oh man. So I start cooking supper, and I can't stand it. Now it's 9:15 or something, and I sneak over. There's bears everywhere. 75 yards out in front of my little blind is a big fatty, I'm like, I run back. I'm like, Carl, there's a really good one. Oh, it'll be there tomorrow. 3 days we do this. 8:30. And I'm like, why am I even here? This is stupid, And again, I was my first hunt. I'm all excited. Yeah. This guy isn't going to shoot one unless it comes in the tent with him. Well, that night I already had formulated a plan. He'd go to bed a little shortly after dark, start snoring like a pig, and he was on a cot, and I'd put a little action pack or something in there so he kind of had a table. Well, as I'd walk by, I noticed he always took off his watch. So I snuck over there and set his watch back an hour. And the next day, he didn't notice all day. We'd go sit late morning. There wasn't nothing there. And then he'd just screw around, try to fish or something. Now it's time to go out. And we're sitting there, and he's like, it's getting dark early tonight. I'm like, it might be just clouds behind the trees we can't see. Sure as the world, out comes a big old fat black bear. And it's about 9:15. He's looking at his watch. Oh, well, this one will be here in time. Bear walks up, make perfect shot, shoots it. We go get a couple pictures, go back to the tent. I tell him I'll go over and skin it after he eats, which I did in the dark. He's already sleeping when I get back to the tent. I sneak over and set his watch back. He never knew.
Wow. That's a sharp move on your part.
I didn't have any choice. But so my first hunt was successful, but a little sneaky.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. What species have you ended up guiding for over the years?
Well, all the normal stuff. I've never guided goat or muskox or polar bears.
Yeah.
Primarily moose, caribou, grizzly, Dall sheep, some specific wolf hunts, but just the normal stuff.
Brown bears on the coast?
Yeah, I guided Cold Bay for several years.
What would you say that your favorite species was to hunt over all your years?
Mine personally?
Yeah.
Wolf.
Yeah.
Any predator. I've never shot a grizzly bear unless I had to. I would never hunt one myself. I love to watch them. I've killed several, but I had to. Black bears, they're like rats to me. I'll shoot everyone I can legally kill. They're camp wreckers, not when you're remote, especially if you're living remote. They don't know what people are.
Like
they're
big
quite
raccoons.
aggressive. No, they're quite aggressive.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been knocked down by 2. I got tore up a little by 1. But
Can you tell us a little bit about that story, about what happened there?
well, I've been knocked down 3 times by bears, but 2 of them were effectively dead bears. They were just coming so hard when you hit them, they just rolled into my knees. But the one that scratched me up, he was in my cabin. And I had that little fox terrier, and he broke the door in. And I just carry a single shot 12 gauge in the summer, or did then anyway, and with buckshot in it. And so I went, it was a pretty good sized cabin. I didn't build it. It was a permitted cabin from a family before. But there, at the one corner of the cabin, there was a window on each side. And that was from the inside of the building. That would have been a bedroom. The kitchen was on the other side. Anyway, the doors tore off. I can hear the bear in there. And I stood at the corner of the building expecting the bear to come out the door. And I sent my little dog in, who was super aggressive. And I hear him attacking the bear, and I'm expecting the bear to come out the door. And it comes through the window right beside me. It wasn't a real big bear either. Hit the ground, and I was like this, and he grabbed me by the chest and just slammed me on the ground. His face was right there. I was like I was a rag doll. I mean, it wasn't a big bear either, but he just slammed me. And I was pretty good size back then. I mean, in good shape. But that little dog came out, grabbed him by the side of the head, and the bear flipped backwards, and I was able to one-hand it and shoot it with the shotgun. But he wrecked a really nice Filson shirt. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't even feel like nervous at that moment. And I've been charged a whole bunch of times, but you generally don't.
Yeah.
But I got up, and it's like, whoa. And what I'm thinking is I got to fix this window and door because the mosquitoes are horrible. And I took about 2 steps and my legs quit working. I sat on that little deck for probably 45 minutes before I could stand up. And I was bleeding really good. And, finally it goes away and, it's in the past. But that was the first one that ever was after me. Maybe he wouldn't have done it if he wasn't cornered. I know he did not know when he came out the window that I was there. I just was.
Right.
But in the same place at a different time, wasn't even the same year, there was a little 2-story cabin, little skinny one. And I used to stay upstairs in it. The downstairs was kind of a shop. And it had a little deck. But it was high enough that the mosquitoes didn't bother you too much. As long as you didn't stir around.
Yeah.
And I was sitting up there one night in a kind of a homemade lazy boy, we'll call it. A chair I could lean back. I was reading a book. The meadow around the cabin had been cleared years before, and it had a lot of second growth, little short stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there, my little dog's sleeping beside me, and the wind was so he couldn't smell it. But out of the corner of my eye, I see the weeds moving. It's dead still. Midnight, but it's summertime. And I'm looking over there, and the weeds are parting and closing. It's like fireweed and a bunch of willows and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what in the world? And it's a black bear, big one, low crawling. And he low crawls right up to the corner of the main cabin, which is below me. And he crawls right along the edge. I'm looking right down. I've got my shotgun in my hand. And he crawls to the first window and stands up, looks in the window, goes back down, low crawls over. There's 3 windows. I mean, he thinks I'm in the cabin. And he did. He got right to the 3rd window right below me. He wasn't 25 feet away. And I just blew the top of his head off. I mean, up there, they did that all the time. They were always, constantly. I mean, I had one hiding behind a log on me. I walked on a trail through the woods to get to my boat, and this big spruce tree had fell across, and I just cut a block out of it and threw it out of the way. Mm-hmm. And I'm walking down there, and I'm like, what am I looking at? There's a streak of black on top of the log, like some weird moss. The back of a black bear. He's laying behind the log waiting for me. And I'm looking at it, and finally I figure out, I'm close, I'm from me to you. I'm like, what the heck? And then he raises up looking for me, ducks back down, and I went, click, do it again. But I actually have had way more trouble with aggressive black bears than grizzlies. Although I've had grizzly trouble, but it's usually... I did have one that stalked me. I know because it come from downwind, but the dogs alerted me. And I didn't have to shoot it. One thing I will say about bears. First of all, anybody tells you to put slugs in your shotgun, it's never had bear problems. You put buckshot. Gives you room for error. Even if it's a pattern that big. I had one bear charging me, coming from below, and I hit him with one pellet in the spine. The rest of them hit the muscle of his neck. But the one in his spine put him down. If it would have been a slug, I'd have just blew a hole through him. Mm-hmm. Now, kill him, yeah. Win. Right?
Yeah.
And at less than 30 feet, buckshot blows their heads off. Mm-hmm. Put slugs behind it if you got a pump gun or an automatic, and shoot them all day long after they're dead with a slug. But carry buckshot in your barrel. That room for error is huge. And I ain't talking about, I shoot like a buckshot choke. Mm-hmm. I'm not spreading it all over the group. Yeah. But yeah, and I carry a shotgun. I'm very good with a handgun. I carry a handgun. Do I trust a handgun to save my life? Not if I can help it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I have had to shoot one grizzly with a handgun, but it was from me to you. And I would have way rather had a shotgun. But yeah, anywhere where I was at, there was a lot of aggressive black bears. And without a dog, I'm quite certain I would have got seriously hurt or killed several times in the course of my years up.
Yeah. Interesting. Have you ever had an experience where your dog got into an altercation with a bear and the dog came back to you and then the bear followed it?
First of all, so what?
Right.
If the dog is barking in the woods outside your cabin, you're alerted. If the bear comes after the dog and it gets you, it's your own damn fault. That advantage, even if it's 2 seconds, is huge. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you've never seen a full-on bear charge through the brush, you don't go to the range and practice for that.
Yeah.
You need to go get one of them tennis ball guns they use, the rich guys use to whack tennis balls. Crank it to 35 mile an hour and have it pointed straight at you and have it so it bounces before it gets there. Now you shoot that tennis ball. I mean, it is insane how fast they come. Yeah. And they don't come loping along. I mean, I've had them where they're flat to the ground.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, again, I shoot a handgun a lot and I'm good. And I practice draw and shoot. I don't stand there and bang away. I still don't want to have to bet my life on that. Give me a shotgun with buckshot.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, it's saved my life. But the dog, is one of the most misrepresented things I've ever heard of in Alaska. It's like, never take a dog. I have all kinds of guides I know. I'd never take a dog to guide camp. I won't go without one. I've never lost a wounded animal. They're all blood trail trained. It's legal.
Yep.
In the state of Alaska, you can use any means or method to recover wounded game.
Yep.
Why wouldn't you?
Yep.
I've never lost a camp. I've always been alerted in camp if there was a bear problem. It just makes no sense to me not to.
Yeah.
But, well, the inconvenience, I got to fly it. Well, what do you do when you're sneaking up on something? Well, train your dog.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't want to do that, it's fine. But don't tell other people not to do it.
Right.
Yeah, I don't like to even go out. The only time I didn't take a dog was Cold Bay because of the flying and some sheep hunts.
Yeah.
And I had a Finnish Spitz that he'd go anywhere I could go. So he went sheep hunt. But as long as you train your dog, it's nothing but an advantage.
Yeah. Yeah. I just had to bring that up because, like you said, so many people talk about it, and it's just one of those things that I was curious to hear your opinion on it.
It's a little like buckshot and shotguns.
Yeah.
Most of the people giving you the advice have never been around bears.
Right.
Or certainly aggressive bears.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you hear all the stories. The dog goes out, barks at a bear, and it chases it back into camp, and people get mauled.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they shouldn't have been in the woods.
Yeah.
It's like the guy that needs a rifle and a scope for shooting caribou at 800 yards. He needs a different hobby.
Well, over all your years, you've told a few stories in the past that I have heard that I think are deserving of telling on here. One of them has to do with what someone thought was a grizzly bear. And these are some of what we would call perhaps backcountry bloopers. You want to tell that one?
Well, there's actually two similar ones, but the one I'll tell is on me, so I'll tell that one. I had my brother and a client up on the south slope with Brooks, and we were on a high ridge system with a big lake. It was a beautiful, beautiful migratory route for caribou and porcupine herd. And we were setting up on the side of a hill overlooking a saddle that was about 3/4 of a mile across, probably. And it was fairly open. A little scrub brush, not much anything. And we'd walked through it. I'd walked through it personally many, many times. Mm-hmm. And we were sitting up there, and it was a beautiful day, and we've been glassing for hours and hours, and we haven't seen anything anywhere. And suddenly, I see something down that saddle, and it disappears. And I go, hey, guys, something down there. And I knew there were, washes and stuff. And I'm reaching for my binoculars, and I'm watching down there again, and I see it, and then it's gone again. And I said, it's a grizzly. It's a grizzly. I knew it was. It was right color. It was moving. It was right over the crest of the hill. This guy had a grizzly tag. I'm like, and they did travel through there all the time. I'm like, all right, come on, guys. The wind was perfect. So we go hauling down, half a mile through the alders, get down there. And we're tiptoeing along. And I'd marked a tree, so I knew right where. And we're there, and it don't look right. Mm-hmm. I'm expecting, a 4-foot swell or something. And there's nothing. There's a little tiny depression. We're standing there, and a bush moves, and I look over, and there's our grizzly bear. A nice, big, fat porcupine. That was a little embarrassing. But that's not as bad as another one I know on another guide, and I won't say his name, but this was Brooks Range as well, and he was grizzly hunting. And he was a younger guy than me, and I was pretty young back then too, but he was very enthusiastic. And he had a real enthusiastic hunter that he'd already got a sheep, but he really wanted a grizzly. So they're looking hard, and all of a sudden they see this grizzly. In the same situation, they're up on a ridge, and it's in a saddle, and they didn't have rangefinders back then. None of us did. And this kid, he's like, oh, wow, that's it was blonde, real pretty. And they're looking at it and go, that is beautiful. And the guy says, what do you think? You want him? The guy goes, how far do you think it is? And he goes, it's probably 250. He goes, I can make the shot, and I got room if I'll be able to follow up. Is that okay? And he's like, yeah, take the shot. Boom, and the bear disappears. They're like, okay, and they wait several minutes in case the bear comes out on either side, and it doesn't come out, and they walk up there. And just to give you a clue here, we called it the potato sack bear. Walks up about 75 yards, and there's a little cliff, and there's a little tiny bear laying there on its back, looked like a porcupine, going. It was this big. It didn't have a sow with it.
Wow.
Little skinny, long-legged thing, and they skinned it, and the hide fit in a potato sack. You know, the net ones. Oh, he took lots of grieving. Oh, it was a legal bear, but
wow,
instead of 250 yards, it was about 60 yards.
Well, that just goes to show you about your topography and how deceiving sometimes that can be.
Yeah, it's really rangefinders changed everything. They made liars out of everybody.
Yeah.
You know, I shot the caribou at 350 yards. No, actually, it was 190. You know, I mean,
yeah.
I love the rangefinders mostly because I'm in planes all the time.
Yeah.
And pilots, if I'm on the ground in a spot where I haven't been before, say a float trip or something, I can tell the pilot exactly how much of a strip we got.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I love that, but
yeah. I remember on a sheep hunt a few years ago, I spent probably close to an hour in my spot and scope looking at what I just knew was a sheep in the fog. And it was a gray-backed marmot. Mm-hmm. And I spent so much time, and I would see the hair move and the fog would come in thicker, and I thought, oh man, I can't quite tell, you know, okay, this side must be the head, and this is his neck, and then the fog cleared, and it was his marmot, and he was standing up on his back legs just looking, and I'm sure he was having a grand old time making fun of me. I got another one, but...
Well, that, you know, I mean, that kind of stuff is always going to happen in terrain, especially if you're not familiar with it, or you haven't walked on it, you know. If you just walk down a ridge and turn around and see something behind you, a pretty good chance you can guess how big it is.
Yeah, exactly.
And bears are always deceiving. Mm-hmm. I used to video everything. I have a video one spring in the snow of two grizzlies coming down the ice from about a quarter mile away, shoulder to shoulder in the spring. Mm-hmm. What's your natural thought? One's real big and one's not. Mm-hmm. Sow with a cub?
Could be.
Or maybe a boar with a sow.
Right.
I'm videoing the whole thing. Still got the video. They're getting closer and closer and closer. And I'm looking at the big one. It's this big, lanky, skinny, sow-looking bear. I don't have I'm not looking at them from the side. They're coming straight at me. Mm-hmm. The little bear's coming down the ice like this, like a big bear. I'm like, what am I looking at? Client's sitting there, and they're coming right to us. And he's like, what is it? I'm like, let's just wait. And they get closer and closer and closer and closer. And now they're at 125 yards, and they lay down on the ice. And the one is way bigger than the other one, but it doesn't look like a boar. But I don't think this is a cub. Mm-hmm. And it's bare ice. You know, it's open river that's covered with ice and snow. I mean, there's gravel bar. I got nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? This is weird. Finally, the little bear gets up and starts coming towards us. We're on a little lead. And it's literally 35 yards. Mm-hmm. And I had been there. Mm-hmm. And I knew a rock he walked by was way too big for what I thought that bear was. And I went, shoot him. And I videoed it. It's a 7.5-foot grizzly. The little one. The big one jumps up, runs away, and it's way bigger. I videoed it running away. It was a boar. It was two boars walking together. One looked young and was huge. Mm. I mean, until that bear was right in front of us and I had something to confirm, that is a big bear.
Yeah, yeah.
And we shot it. It was a 7.5-foot bear. I don't even know how big the other bear was. It was huge.
And the one that the client shot was a boar?
Yeah, they were both boars.
Wow.
I ended up bringing that video and showed it 2 or 3 old-time guides that had been way more experienced than I had, and I had quite a bit by then. Mm-hmm. And they all watched the video and said the same thing. Looks like a sow with a cub. Is it a boar with a sow? Until I told them, or they got to the point where we shot. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's 30, 35 yards. Then they said, that's actually a pretty good bear, isn't it? Yeah, 7.5 footer.
Yeah.
Oh, how big was the other one? I don't know. I showed it to a bear biologist in Fairbanks. Did the exact same.
Huh.
Weird stuff happens.
Oh, yeah.
And bears are always tough unless you got the typical ears out here. And,
Right.
you know, I mean,
Right.
when you see a monster, it's usually, but this one, I think, was just genetically really big and young. That's the only thing I've ever been able to figure out.
Interesting.
But yeah, bears are fun. I like to hunt bears. I just don't like to shoot bears. You know, I mean, and a lot of clients, I don't really like it when they get a bear because a lot of them, maybe in my opinion, shouldn't shoot a bear. When it comes to absolute fun, though, it's calling moose is a blast. You know, if your goal is to see how close you can get them, it can be really fun.
Yeah.
But I love to hunt wolves. Well, I did a lot of coyote hunting in my life, too. It's the most challenging. You know, calling in wolves, I've called them in from me to you. I called in 3 for my brother the first time he was up here. At about 21 feet. We were both sideways. I voice call them, and they were coming up the valley, and then they got quiet. We had a little slough, and I thought they were going to come out on the bank of the slough, and there's a little high spot to our left with a little creek between us and this little hump. And all of a sudden, 3 wolves bail out of the dwarf birch and land right on the other side of this creek. Just 21 feet, we measured it. Shoulder to shoulder, bristled up and growling. And we're like, my brother's right here, and I'm right here, and I'm holding my dog. I had my finished bit. And my brother looks at me. He turns his head. He looks at me. Should I shoot? I said, yeah. He totally missed.
Oh.
But wolf hunting is fun.
Yeah.
I mean,
So when you say voice calling, you're just howling?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like coyotes. They're big time. They're super territorial.
Yeah.
So basically, if I hear a howl in the distance, I never blind call ever.
Okay.
Unless I can put my back against something, a lake or something. Blind call. I spent a lot of time with professional predator hunters. I did a little of it myself. I mean, professionals back in the wool tax days,
Okay.
wool incentive. Guys that killed coyotes for a living. And the really good ones would never, ever blind call, period. Because you're going to screw up. They're going to circle wind you, and now you educated them. So you spot them, you hear them, then you call. You put yourself in the most advantageous position you can, then you call. When you go out and blind call, you're probably seeing 30% top, but you just educated 70.
Right.
So I treat wolves the same way. Yeah, I'd never blind call. But if I hear them howling and I can get myself, and then I will, the first time I encounter them, I will act like a wolf that's new to their territory. I won't challenge. I'll usually just do a locator or something, get their attention, and then if they howl back, then I'll challenge. And they usually come to eat me. They're real easy to call if they haven't been around people.
Yeah.
I've had clients that they get more nervous with wolves than any other thing. By far, it's not even close. I mean, experienced hunters that shake so bad they couldn't hit a barn when there's a wolf coming at them that they can see from a distance. I've called wolves in from a mile away, packs, where they saw them coming the whole way, and I'll say, do not even point your gun at them until they're at this bush, let's say 125 yards. They start blazing away at 500, empty their gun. And I'm like, what are you doing? Oh, I couldn't believe it, I had one client do it 3 times on the same big white wolf. He started out as a pack, called him in, he blew it, 500 yards, just emptied his gun. Then I called him in again. This time it was just 2 of them, but it was the same big white one. This time he started shooting at like 400, and they were running at us. He didn't come within a mile. 3-4 days later, I spot the wolf in a whole different area, a couple miles away. And my brother was with me, and I had the client sit facing me, So he couldn't see the wolf in a low spot. So he could not see the wolf until it was at 50 yards. And I put my brother in a spot where he could see both the wolf and the client. And I said, just let me know what's good. But you have to change sounds every time. You can't go back.
Yeah.
So I was using
Okay.
I like critter calls, open reader, original open read calls. I've been using critter calls since the late 70s. But I start calling, and it was so far away, I didn't think it could hear me. But the wind was kind of right. And I'm just bellowing on this thing, and not doing more like it sounded more like a pig squeal.
Yeah.
Something the wolf's never heard. But and John, he goes, my brother, he says, he heard you. So I just kept calling, never stopped, and he kept coming until he disappeared at the base of the mountain. And we knew he was getting close. And then John's going, here he comes. Well, the client still can't see him. But I hand signaled the client, and the client's like, get all ready. Here the wolf pops over right in front of him, broadside, looking at me over here. It's broadside, 50 yards, and he misses.
Oh.
But I immediately started doing pup yelps,
Yeah.
And it stopped and looked back, and he got it. It's number 3 in the record book in Europe.
Wow.
It's huge. But
Wow.
that was his 3rd time on that wolf. So sometimes it's harder to trick the clients than it is to trick the animal.
Yeah.
Number 3. Wow. How big was the skull?
I don't even remember. I never pay attention to that stuff. I just
Wow.
heard it a minute. That's another good story. Europeans hate to use American taxidermists for some reason.
Huh.
And European taxidermists are horrible on bears and wolves. I've seen some disaster. This guy, he lived in a castle, a real castle. He had to get permission from the government to change anything in the structure.
Oh.
I mean, it was a real castle. It had giant fireplaces.
Wow.
And he got this wolf taxidermied, sitting down howling, just like the very first time he saw the wolf. The first time he blew it. But well, this taxidermist, I swear, must have used like an enlarged German Shepherd skull or something. Anyway, the taxidermy was a giant white. It was huge, but it looked exactly like a giant German Shepherd with its head in the air, with its mouth open, and it looked like it was begging.
Oh, man.
So the guy's wife put a basket in its mouth with kindling for the fireplace. It looked like the big dog had brought you a basket. It was hilarious.
Oh, boy. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I've seen, the bears, maybe they're a lot better. We're talking a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
But, some of these really nice grizzly bears, and then the guys this back before digital stuff, they'd send me a enlargement of their grizzly bear rug, and you look at it and go, what'd they do to it? It looked like a pug.
Yeah.
I've seen some really bad ones, but I got to admit, I like taxidermy. I always thought it'd be fun to have my own little private museum of the worst taxidermy I could find. There's a caribou in Manly Hot Springs in the Roadhouse.
Yeah.
That is world class. It's yellow from all the cigarette smoke,
I've
and its
seen that,
eyes aren't
Yeah.
right.
I've seen
I'm
that one.
Oh, that would just be awesome.
Yep. I have a calendar in my back room that I'll have to show you. That
He'd
is
appreciate that, wouldn't he?
messed
Yeah,
up
he
old
would.
taxidermy.
Oh yeah,
It is hilarious stuff.
Yeah, some of it's just fantastic.
So you briefly touched on sheep hunting.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of folks that I'm sure are aware of kind of a changing climate with the sheep hunting population and availability up here.
Yeah, it's really bad.
A lot's changed. So maybe tell us a few sheep hunting stories from your guiding days, and then kind of weigh in, and if you have a 2 cents to give on how you see things have changed. And
Well, I haven't been into the sheep guiding for quite a while now, and I've only guided in the Brooks Range,
okay,
and primarily in one general area. And the sheep population back then, in the 90s, around 2000, was very good. fantastic genetics over on the Canadian border. 15-inch bases was just normal. Good population. I mean, you'd take 2 clients and get 2 sheep, and often 2 days each. I mean, as long as the guy could walk. And that's the main reason I quit sheep guiding, is just because the clients lie like crazy. You talk to them on the phone 20 times, and I'm hiking 12 miles a week with 40-pound pack and blah, blah, and they show up with brand new boots and they're 40 pounds overweight and they got 1 climb in them, period. So you got to kill the sheep on the first climb or they're done.
Yeah.
They don't care how much they pay. They ain't going back up there.
Yeah.
Now you can either try to ease up into a spot and ambush, which is very successful if you don't have other hunting pressure. It's probably the best way to sheep hunt. But when you got those guys that are only good for 1 climb, you cannot screw it up. I mean, I stalk in the dark. Population was great, though. It was very common to see 5 legal rams in a group, maybe 3 groups from 1 lookout position.
Yeah.
Say 20 square miles, we'll say.
Yeah.
Licks were obvious, and ambushing off licks and no pressure is the best way to sheep, as long as you have the patience to sit there. They're going to come, and you're going to get a lot more opportunity than chasing the sheep around the mountain. But that opportunity, from what I understand, is gone. The sheep population doesn't exist, and there's still a lot of pressure. So I only hunted in one area that was state ground. I was always in exclusives. And in that area, there was a lot of pressure. So as long as you know it, and you know there's sheep in the area, and you got a topo map, you can sit the topo map, look at the one place that any sheep pushed from any direction will go.
Yeah.
And that's where you need to be 2 days before the season opens, hunkered down, eating cold food, not moving, and you shoot the sheep when he walks by when the other guys chase him. It's the only way to hunt high-pressure areas successfully.
Yeah.
Personally, I couldn't do that. I did it once, and I'll never do it again, is because a guy paying, even those days, when it was only $8,500 for a sheep hunt, that was a lot of money to me.
Yeah.
And I think if a guy's paying that kind of money to come all the way to Alaska for this sheep hunt, he shouldn't sit there and see a guy over there and a guy over there and a guy over there. I don't think morally it's right. So I never guided in state ground again. In the exclusives, you have no pressure unless it's hunters from Alaska. And when you're that remote, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Now they're drop hunts all over the place, but they weren't back then.
Yeah.
And they can't drop hunt non-residents. So,
Right.
but it's a whole different world.
Yeah.
I mean, the money's told. We used to do combination caribou, moose, and grizzly for $8,500, and we paid the flying from Fairbanks.
Wow.
Now it's 25 plus just for moose.
Yeah.
It's totally different
Right.
environment. But I can't imagine the state ground anymore. But with the sheep population the way it is and the pressure you get from the guide board and, quite frankly, sheep hunters, they're not going to close it. My proposals are always ones that other guides hate. My proposal is don't limit the sheep hunting anywhere. Just make them use paintball guns. What difference does it make? You got a good camera on a paintball gun. You shoot your sheep. If they're only good for 50 yards or so, you did a good job hunting. A blue paintball whacks a big, beautiful doll sheep right behind the shoulder. You killed it. And it walks away, and the next guy can shoot it with a red paintball. They don't eat them. I love doll sheep. Clients don't eat them. All they do is put the head on a wall.
Yeah.
Well, they can prove they shot it right here. Only now 19 guys can shoot it instead of 1. I mean, sport hunting is kind of a joke anyway, right? You can't justify it. But it's an enormous amount of money, and you got a lot of pressure, especially political pressure, to allow it. So,
Right.
But when you have a severely depleted population and people just bang in your door about letting us hunt,
Yeah.
the biologists got to just pull their hair out.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, why am I even here?
I'm sure.
So, yeah, let them hunt with paintballs. There'd be a lot of money in it. You make 200-yard paintball gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to catch on. It's kind of like the proposal when I said, I don't think they should allow anybody that shoots an animal with the assistance of a guide allowed in the record book because it's not fair chase. I didn't have a lot of people agree with me. And a little tongue in cheek, but at the same time, it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of related to that, before we turned on the machine here to record, Tom, you were talking about the difference in nationality of a lot of your clients, right? And especially guiding for one particular outfitter that you guided mostly for over your time up here. You talked a lot about having European clients.
Yeah.
And kind of the gist of your, tongue-in-cheek paintball gun solution to the sheep hunting enigma up here, kind of the idea of that is that it's not about just killing the sheep and taking it home and having a mount on the wall.
It shouldn't be.
And that it's about the hunt. And so maybe segue that into what you were saying to us earlier before we turned on the recording here. And if I could just have you scoot in like 6 inches there from the edge so we just don't cut you out of the camera there.
You won't miss nothing. I guess, again, it's my opinion. It's the way I was brought up or whatever. And it's kind of ridiculous for a guide to be saying this, but trophy hunting is very hard to justify. Now, if you're guiding a guy with a bow and arrow, let's say a long bow, chances are he's an exceptional hunter. He's got tremendous amount of self-discipline, and his ego isn't this big. He's willing to go home with a good hunt and not a trophy.
Yeah.
Or he wouldn't be there with a longbow.
Yeah.
When you get clients showing up with $8,000 setups with zeros to, let's say, 800 yards, their only goal is to go home with something. And that alone I have a problem with. Now, guiding Europeans, that was never a single issue ever. Not once. They generally have one gun that they hunt with. They hunt a lot. Or used to. I don't know about today. A doctor that had a hunting area that he was paying a lot of money to have was required to shoot possibly hundreds of animals per year off that property, or he would get heavily fined. So they would spend hundreds of hours a year hunting, mostly in high seats, quite comfortable high seats, with very nice equipment, but they spent enormous amount of time looking at wildlife, looking through rifle scopes at wildlife, pulling triggers. Their hunting ethic was fantastic. Their self-discipline was fantastic. They were all universally very good shots. They have to go to school to hunt.
Yeah.
Here, you buy a rifle, you buy a license, you go hunt. I loved guiding Europeans with exception of one. Hopefully he's dead of old age. But there's only one. And he wasn't the typical European. He was much younger. He was more American. The German clients, not necessarily German, European clients, would show up for a 10-day or 14-day hunt, be successful on the first legal day of the season, and they would refuse to get in the airplane and come back to town. They wanted the experience.
Yeah.
They'd have me teach them how to make fires with bow drills. I fish with a bean can with line wrapped around it and Mepps Chartreuse number 2. I've caught thousands of grayling with it. They wanted to learn to do that. They wanted to watch me call in mink or call in fox, wolves, whatever. They wanted the experience and they truly appreciated it. And I respect the heck out of that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's billions of people on this planet and only a handful get that experience. When it slowly transitioned for a whole bunch of reasons, but primarily age, to no more Europeans and went to primarily Americans. Now, I've guided some fantastic Americans, so I'm not trying to say all Americans are like this, but most Americans that I guided in the last few years before I quit couldn't care less. They wanted Boone and Crockett, they want it on the first day, and they want to get back to town. They think they're going on a safari. They want to know where the cook is. And there was no appreciation. They didn't even see the wilderness. all they wanted to do is see where's my trophy, whatever. And it disgusted me and I quit.
Yeah.
And, and again, I've guided some great Americans. One of them's still one of my best friends. I guided him like 3 or 4 times. My age, great guy. Most of them were good people. They just have a mindset that wasn't compatible with mine.
What do you think causes that difference in mindset that's so drastic between some of those American clients and the European clients?
Well, I got to say, a lot of the clients that I was guiding, but right before I quit, weren't hunters their whole life. They were very successful people, businessmen, whatever. They retired young often with no hobbies, so they needed a different hobby. All right, you got a guy that's highly successful with a ton of money, and he's never done anything interesting in his entire life. Almost nothing. Ask them to write a book about their life, and what do you got? Nothing. And they realized that. So all of a sudden, they're searching for something to make all this they've done meaningful, and hunting is often what they think is the answer. They can prove themselves. And bears, of course, are the thing. So they go out with no experience or very little experience. They buy a fancy rifle. They buy a fancy scope. They go to the local gun shop, get a whole bunch of advice, usually bad advice, and they go to a gun range and they learn how to pull a trigger, and then they pay their money and expect their animal. And that's just what they expect. It's not a hunt. It's a reward for their lifetime of success and proof of it.
Right.
And quite frankly, it doesn't jive with the way I think.
Yeah.
If you're meat hunting, you're hungry, I will look the other way for any means or method if you're feeding yourself. But if all you're doing is stoking your ego, I ain't supporting it.
Yeah.
800-yard shots on a hunting animal that can take a full step in time of flight, and you call that sport hunting?
Yeah.
I think hunting should be, and again, it's ego, mine. I am proud of the fact that I'm a good hunter. It takes a big investment to be a good hunter. And just killing something, if all you want to do is kill something, go buy some cows.
Yeah.
If you want to hunt, the goal should be to hunt. My measure of a good hunter is not whether they kill something, but whether they could have killed something. If a guy shows me a picture of a 10-point buck whitetail, and then he's got another picture of the same buck 3 days later, and another picture of it the same day, he passed on it 3 times. He's like, that's too old. They're too tough. I don't want to eat it. I respect the heck out of that. The guy that will go completely out of his way, spotlight it in the dark or whatever to just put it on his wall, I don't respect it.
Yeah.
But, I think we're only a generation or 2 away from probably no hunting. It'll be professionals only.
Yeah.
And I think that's a shame.
Yeah.
But the reality is you can't justify sport hunting. And in a lot of places, the populations are either exploding because of underhunting, so they have to hire professionals, or you get situations like Dall sheep in Alaska where the population's drastically reduced, but you have so much pressure from hunters to get them that they're going to have to just say, no, you can't hunt. Well, it only takes about a generation of that, and all of a sudden there's nobody to replace them, especially if there's any kind of major economical change. When you're jacking up the prices to insane numbers, and people aren't making more money, and only rich people can hunt. Now the poor people are going to get mad.
Right.
So
kind of on that question, and this is the last thing that we'll tackle here before we take a quick break. For someone that's let's just call them a prospective client, that they want to come up to Alaska on a guided hunt or even a do-it-yourself hunt, right? Obviously, a do-it-yourselfer can't hunt sheep or brown and grizzly bear or goats. But for anything else, someone that wants to come up to Alaska to hunt, what advice do you have for that person about what to expect and the mentality that they need to have coming to Alaska?
Well, I think what it comes down to is you have to be realistic. Just look at some numbers. Look at the total numbers of moose shot in the state of Alaska in a year as an average. And then look in the record book and see how many are in there.
Yeah.
You got to realize that there are boone and crockett animals out there. But you haven't done anything special to deserve one. And even if you get one, you didn't do anything special to deserve it.
Yeah.
Don't come here looking to get your name in the record book. Earn it. And I ain't talking just moose. It can be any animal. Sure. But if you're going on a guided hunt, the one thing I would say without question is talk to other clients from that guide, period. There's, I don't hardly know any of the guides left. Only know a handful. And the ones I do know that I respect, I will gladly send clients their way. But there are so many. They aren't all good. I mean, I've heard absolute horror stories. And I'll guarantee you, if a guy even hints about guaranteeing you a hunt, if he guarantees in a hint of an animal, stay away from it.
Yeah.
The guy is guaranteeing you a hunt, not an animal.
Yeah.
And if he's hinting that he's guaranteeing you an animal, he's unethical and don't touch him.
Yeah.
Go off his numbers, talk to his clients. If you can pay that kind of money, it's the same money to whether the good outfitters are bad.
Yeah.
The good ones don't charge more. They all charge the same. Find the good one, even if you got to wait a year or two. Especially if you're only going to come once.
Right.
If you're doing a drop hunt, quite frankly, if somebody said, no experience in Alaska, I want to do a drop hunt, I'd say don't. Anywhere you can get dropped by a Jippo drop hunt service, there's going to be 20 other guys there. It's going to be way overhunted. Success rate's going to be effectively zero. They only taken those kind of hunts to places that are easy to get to. And I don't mean close to town. I mean easy to land.
Right.
And there aren't that many places. Floats, wheels, doesn't matter. There's only a given number. And if they're dropping hunts, they're dropping a bunch of them in the same place.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Find somebody in Alaska, online maybe.
Yeah.
Communicate with them. Find a local that likes to hunt. Buddy up with them. Talk them into taking you. If they got an airplane, all the better. But again, that's not realistic for the majority of the population. But drop hunts are, it's, in my opinion, they're going to be outlawed. The natives hate them, and I'm with them. They use the villages for landing strips and store gas and ignore everybody that's local. Maybe the first year they give them a bunch of meat, and then after that they just ignore them. Yeah. They're causing a lot of grief, and it's going to end up, it'll come to violence at some point. It might be, not truly violence, but airplanes are going to get wrecked. It's going to happen. It's just become ridiculous.
We were talking to a guy who works for a big name company, hunting company in the States, who was up here with some friends, I think also probably with the same crew, same company. And they came up here to do that, and they flew out of Kotzebue. And they landed them on a ridge. And every way where they looked, they could see other hunters. Did they see any caribou?
No.
Not a one. Well, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. And the drop hunters don't care.
No.
They're not even really putting their name out there. They got a shingle that says, I will fly you.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe supply you with a tent or a raft or whatever.
Yeah.
But they're not vested.
Right.
I mean, and I ain't going to say names or where, but it's becoming a serious problem.
Yeah.
And it will reach a point where it's not going to be allowed. Yeah. It's just going to be not allowed.
Yeah.
They'll limit it something, but they have to.
Yeah. It's like a lot of other things. If we don't self-regulate and come up with a solution for it, then there will be legislation.
Americans no longer self-regulate.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of the computer age, but there's no patience. And there's no self-regulating. There isn't. Nobody, occasionally, I've even seen this happen. You see some guy out and he's hunting, very little experience, maybe doesn't have a lot of time or whatever. He sees that sheep over there at 500-600 yards. He's not even sure if it's legal. Nobody's around.
Yeah.
He takes a shot. Sheep jumps, runs a little bit, takes another shot. Sheep jumps, runs a little bit. Say his buddy's back at camp. Sheep walks over the hill. I need a better rifle. He goes back to the tent. Did I hear shooting? Yeah, I think it was over there. I saw a sheep, but he was too far away. I passed on it. That happens all the time now. He don't even know if he hit it. The sheep could have walked over the hill and died. I've seen in Colorado back when the elk hunting was going crazy. It was over-the-counter tags. And same thing. Guys shooting 400, 500, 600 yards at elk, which are hard to kill. It don't fall down. They don't even go look. They go back to camp. See anything? Yeah, I saw a good one. He's too far away. I didn't shoot. Happens all the time. I don't know. We've lost our ethics. I remember one time 3 clients flew in on a hunt. 2 young guys. Well, 2 guys the same age. They're brothers. And then a son. The father and son had brand new 3378s, bull barrels, the tall Harris bipods, 6.5 to 20 Leopolds or something. I'd never even seen a 3378 before. They had muzzle brakes on them. I'm like, what the heck? This is a sheep hunt. Oh, that's the newest, greatest, and I won't let anybody go without zeroing their rifle.
Yeah.
We were on a big gravel bar. This is up in the brook. The first guy pulls the trigger. I swear to God, a hand grenade went off in front of us. I couldn't see anything. The dust blew all over. I had earplugs in, but I was like, what? We were shooting at a box this big at 100 yards. He didn't hit the box. And the other guy, and these guys are both wearing mossy oak camouflage or something in the Brooks range. The other guy is wearing a pair of Carhartt tan pants, well weathered.
Yeah.
He's got on a plaid wool shirt. He's got a plaid wool coat and an Elmer Fudd hat with the little fuzzy thing on top that's weathered to no end. He's got pre-64 Model 70 and 30-06 with a fixed 4-power scope on it. And when I looked at him, I went, he ain't going to miss. I had him zero. He shot one shot about 2 inches high of dead center. Perfect 200-yard zero. The other 2 guys shot 7 times to get on paper and said, oh, that's good enough. I'm like, okay. Those guys shot 1 sheep, 1 wolf, 1 caribou between the 3 of them. I think there was 28 shots fired. All 3 animals were killed with 1 shot apiece. All 30-06. I mean, you see that stuff all the time, but and quite frankly, I'm cynical. There's some really good guides out there with really good opportunities for hunters. There's just not very many anymore.
Yeah.
And especially if it's a once in a lifetime thing.
Yeah.
Take your time and find a good one.
Yeah.
Don't just come because you can.
Yeah. Well, I think we should take a quick break and then we'll jump back into this and start heading to the end. Well, let's just quickly circle back to sheep hunting before we continue on here towards the second half. You talked about guiding a lot of sheep hunts back in some of the earlier years of your guiding days with Sandy. Maybe single out a couple of your favorite sheep hunts or hunts that maybe had an interesting twist or something where you learned.
Well, I'll tell you one, and I ain't taking credit for this, but I got lucky years ago. I was already guiding, and I'd gone back to the States for something, and I got stuck in Denver waiting for a flight, and the guy sitting next to me was reading a book on sheep. It wasn't a hunting book. It was a book on bighorn sheep. We got talking. Turns out he'd wrote the book. He was a biologist, older guy. This is years ago. And he had been following bighorn sheep in, I think, primarily Wyoming. And we got to talk. I told him I guided sheep hunts in Alaska. And then he starts talking about, I darted 500 sheep or something. I go, I have some experience with dart guns farm. Mm-hmm. They have the range of a slingshot, at least then, maybe they're better. I'm like, how are you darting sheep? And my assumption is very good quality blinds. He said, no, I just stalk them. I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah, you can stalk any sheep you want to, as long as you're patient. There's just one rule. You never look at them. And so he tells me the story. He developed the method, or at least that's what he told me. He said, when you spot a sheep you want to get, in this case, darting, he says, pick your route so once you enter the sheep's vision, you never are in a spot where it can't see you. Period. You cannot be seen by the sheep and then disappear, or it'll leave. When you come into its vision, doesn't matter if it's a mile away or 200 yards away, you have to stay in its vision. You can't go in a ravine. You can't go behind a rock. And he said, you go directly at the sheep obliquely. I'm listening to every word this guy's saying. Mm-hmm. He said, go obliquely, zigzag towards the sheep. Never look at the sheep. And act like you're doing something. Pick up a rock. Pick up sticks. Pull a leaf off. If you look at the sheep, do it out of the corner of your eye. And just go directly towards them, but obliquely. Take your time. And he said, that sheep will let you get to within 150, 200 yards. Then it'll get up, get nervous, and run a little ways. Do not change anything you're doing. Stop, look at it, nothing. Just keep going. Because they're going to glance back. And as long as you're not paying attention, this time you can cut the distance in half. The next time, you can cut it in half again until you're within dart range. And I can't wait to try this. And I'm like, this guy, I don't remember his name, everything he's saying, and he's almost telling it to me reluctantly. Mm-hmm. I tend to believe that better. That fall, I had a perfect situation. I had 3 rams up a valley. I had a Swiss client that I already knew, and he had his son-in-law with him who wasn't hunting. He was just observing. And we went up this valley. We spotted the sheep from 6 or 7 miles. Went way into them. When we got there, it was that situation. They're at the head of a drainage on a bluff. It's an open valley. There's literally no way to stalk this sheep. No way. Bluffs. We didn't have enough daylight to even do anything except go straight at them. And I tell this client, filthy rich, super nice, experienced hunter, what we're going to do. And he's like, what? And I said, no, it'll work. So I said, you follow right behind me about 10 feet. Do exactly what I'm doing. Never look at the sheep. And we did. It was fully 3/4 of a mile up this valley. Once we went out to where they could see us, we never quit moving, or briefly. We always stayed in vision. We never looked at them. We just zigzagged. And the whole time I'm doing it, I'm thinking, they're going to run. Mm-hmm. And they didn't. They just sat there, all 3 big, beautiful rams. Looked like triplets, sitting there looking at us, all 38s. We got to about 200 yards, and they all stood up. And I knew they were going to run. Well, I didn't know it. I believed it.
Yeah.
And they did. But we never stopped. I told them, don't stop, don't stop. They went about 100 yards, stopped, stood there looking at us, and we kept going until we were back to about 200. And there was a boulder laying there. And I said, when we get to the boulder, lay down behind it and use your pack to shoot, and I'm going to keep grazing. Mm-hmm. And he did. Made a perfect shot. He just stood there. It's the only time I did it. Worked beautifully. The guy and the son-in-law, he videoed us all the way up the valley. It's quite a long video, but terribly boring. But the whole time you can see us and the sheep watching us. It's awesome. It worked. I'd love to do it again, but I never had that opportunity. But I certainly would not be afraid to do it again. That really worked good.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever heard that before.
Yeah, I can't remember the guy. I got it in my old journals, the guy's name. And I actually bought his sheep book, which was quite good, but it was strictly on biology.
Yeah.
But yeah, that really works. But, you know, you got to use a lot of self-discipline. You cannot look, and again, I'm saying this only secondhand.
Yeah.
He said you cannot look at the sheep.
Yeah.
So I didn't look at the sheep.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
But sheep hunting, by and large, is super simple. It's very simple. If they're not hunted, they're patterned. So take a day, pattern them. They will do the exact same thing unless they're going to a lick. They get spooked by wolves or bears. They're going to do the exact same thing tomorrow at the same time. So take a day and watch them and just be in their way the next day at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally above them.
Yeah.
But in a high pressure hunting, sheep, totally different. Go to a place where they're going to get pushed to and let other hunters chase them to you.
Mm-hmm.
But fortunately, I didn't have to do that only that one time.
Yeah.
But sheep hunting, I just love the country.
Yeah.
Biggest problem with sheep hunting is the sheep hunters usually aren't nearly as in good a shape as they think they are.
Mm-hmm.
And one huge advantage to being a guide that was in really good shape was if you get anybody that's just a little bit uppity, you just look uphill and go, oh, I think there's one up there. Come on. And then just go. And get them to the top of the mountain and go, oh, darn. And I mean, push them. They're not uppity anymore. Same thing works in the tussocks.
Yeah.
You get a guy that really doesn't want to sit there anymore, even though you know you're doing everything right, but he wants to go look around the bend in the river or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Just take him in a 2-mile swing out through hip-deep tussocks.
Mm-hmm.
And don't slow down. Just go. If you spent, several hundred miles walking through them, you can go through them pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
They can't. I got a video. This was actually a sheep hunt. And it was actually a really nice guy in terrible shape. But we had about a 1.5 mile stretch of horrific tussocks. I mean, where we got dropped from the airplane to the base of the mountain. They were horrible.
Mm.
The client made it about a 1/4 mile and couldn't carry his pack. And he's supposed to be in great shape. So I got all my stuff plus the camp. Now he can't carry his pack. So I got to take my pack ahead a mile, go back, get his. We had a 9-mile spike. So I had to do 27 miles. Got a sheep. It was all good. He's a great guy, just terrible shape. We're coming back, and we're back to that horrific tussock spot. And I am loaded down. I got everything.
Yeah.
And I'm doing it in one trip.
Yeah.
I cut walking sticks. I mean, I'm carrying a huge load, and I got sticks so I can take the weight on my arms. And I don't even want to think about stopping. And I know, I mean, if you got some experience, you can look at a tussock field, and you can see where not to go.
Yeah.
And where not to go is the shortcut. And I start cutting around. It's going to be another 1/2 mile at least. And he goes, man, I ain't going that far. I'm just going straight to camp. I said, don't go through there. He goes, I'm going through. And all he's carrying is like his raincoat and his glass, his binoculars and his rifle. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I don't care. And I take off and I make my big swing around this, which I can tell is really bad stuff. And I get to the other side of it, and there's kind of this sand dune cut. Good place to stop and drop my pack, and I can lift my pack up, set it back on top of the dune, and get in it. And I only got maybe 1/3 of a mile left to camp. But I hadn't even looked at him. And again, I'm carrying a high-8 camera back then. And I look out in the middle of this, and these were tussocks. These were armpitters.
Oh, boy.
You can't, get through them.
Yeah.
Well, he'd try to walk on top.
Oh, boy.
Well, I turn back, drop my pack, and I sit down, and I'm looking right out this field, and what the heck is that? And I had a chest mount for my high-8. I pull it out. It's 2 legs going like this. He had flipped and gone head first between the tussocks, and he was stuck. It's just little fat legs going like this. And it's quite a ways out there. And I'm like, oh, man. And I wait a couple minutes. and I'm laughing hard on the video.
Oh, yeah.
And he ain't getting out. I'm like, oh, man. So now I grab my walking sticks and, you can cheat. You get, a couple points anchor. And I get out to him and he is stuck. I mean, I'm having a hard time. I'm half pulling his pants off, trying to pull it. I mean, he's down there so far, I'm all hearing his muffled, help, get me over here. I got him out. And, he had his, his coat, what had happened, he got wedged. And when he tried to push himself up, it was mud between them. So he had no leverage. And then when he grabbed the side of the tussocks and tried to cheat his way up, his coat bunched up and jammed him.
Oh.
I had to reach in, grab his coat, and pull him out by the coat. I was like, just kind of lay on him and crawl, which he did. He's like, I'm never coming back to Alaska. He was a great guy. The first night we'd gone out, and I'm packing the whole dang works. We only got in 3 miles, but I'd already done 9. Set up the camp. It's getting late. He is exhausted. And he was in the medical profession, so he'd self-prescribed painkillers and was going to walk himself into shape.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in the tent. It's a tiny little 2-man, really a 1-man, but we're both in it. I got all Primaloft. We're soaking wet. It rained the whole day. He's got Light Loft, which if you ever get near it, run. It's like a sponge, and it's useless when it's wet. That's what he's got. But he's standing out in front of the tent. I'm in the tent with video camera on, sticking outside the tent, pointing. He's skylined, beautiful night. It quit raining, and he's just looking at the mountains. It's almost dark. His name is Blake, and I go, hey, Blake, what do you think about sheep hunting so far? When I get back to the States, I'm going to embellish this story. He don't know I'm video. I'm going to embellish this story, blah, 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 Okay. He ends up getting stomach cramps that night. He's soaking wet. He's got all his clothes on. That Light Loft is useless when it's wet. And he's getting stomach cramps on top of it. He's got the shakes. And he won't, do anything. I tell him, get all your clothes off. Get in the bag with no clothes. He won't do it. But his stomach's cramping up and he sits up. Oh, God. Oh. And I am laughing. I'm right beside him, warm as toast, laughing. I can't help it. Anyway, several days later, he's got a great sheep. We're back in that exact same spot. This is the night before he gets stuck in the tussock.
Yeah.
And we're literally, the tent is in the exact same spot. It was the only flat spot there. Same scenario, only now, no joke, this is maybe 6 days later, he looks like a different person. He lost so much weight.
Yeah.
and he is completely exhausted. He had brand new boots. He had destroyed his feet. By the 3rd night, he'd have to soak his feet in the creek to get his socks off because the dried blood wouldn't let him pull them off.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Great guy, though. I mean, great sense of humor. Now we're in the exact same spot. He's outside the tent again. I got the camera back on. This is all on video. I still possess it. I said, hey, Blake, what do you think about sheep and hunting now? You still going to embellish it? He goes, I got to tone it down or nobody's going to believe it.
That's great.
That was fun.
Truth is better than, truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah. They ain't all like that, but you usually get a pretty good story out of every trip.
Yeah. What do you think that you have taken away? That this is something that I've kind of done with some of the better clients that I've had over the years, and I've been pretty lucky thus far to have pretty good clients. Several of them, like top-notch people that I still keep in touch with. But something I like to do is, a lot of them come from a background, kind of like what you mentioned earlier, but I guess in a better sense. They've accomplished something in life that is a great achievement, whether it's to them or to other people that look at their accomplishments. They're all a professional at something to some extent.
Generally.
And
or inherited it.
Right. But things that you kind of pick up and learn from people and advice. And I guess what I'm trying to ask is, what do you think the best part about guiding was for you over all your years? Because even though you have the turds in a punch bowl every once in a while, you kept doing it for how many years?
27 or 8.
So you don't do it for 27 years if you don't enjoy it to at least a certain extent.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I love the bush.
Yeah.
And there's almost no way to make money in the bush except for trap and guide. And there's no money in trapping. And even back 20 years ago, I was getting paid $500 a day to guide just because of my reputation. I could book hunts specifically to me. I could turn down 6, 7 guys a year. I'd talk to them on the phone. A lot of these are Europeans.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all word of mouth. We never advertised.
Yeah.
And I live on very, very little income. And I love the bush.
Mm-hmm.
And it was basically, and I didn't know anything about gold or anything like that back then. And so if I wanted to be in the bush and have enough money to survive,
mm-hmm.
I basically had to guide.
Yeah.
And after a few years, I felt so obligated to Sandy for the opportunities that I'd realized because of him,
mm-hmm.
that I told him I will guide until you quit, which I did. It turned when I first started guiding with him, maybe running 15 hunts, 8, 9 guides, a lot of doubles. He cracked up an airplane, was telling me, 'cause he and I already established pretty regular relationship because I was also log building with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a numbers guy. I'm as far from it as you can get. But I'm good at it. I just hate it. But I was helping him do his taxes and the paperwork required for guiding. And I'm looking at, this is a lot of clients and a lot of guides and a lot of flying. And I'm looking at all the numbers. And I said, Sandy, if it was just me, you, and one other guide, you'd make the same profit with none of this stress. And again, there's a whole different number deal then. And he's like, let's do it. So we basically cut it right down to no more than myself and 2 other guides ever. Sandy sometimes would take a client as well, and he was doing the flying. We cut easily 60%, easily, and made the same money, and all of a sudden there's no stress.
Mm-hmm.
All the clients got what they would come after. We had so many options at that point. We had an enormous guide use area with no clients. So you fly into a spot and conditions are weird, let's say, because you don't live up there. You fly into a lake that you hunted last year and the water's so shallow you can't land on floats. We did and get stuck. We can't hunt here.
Yeah.
And Sandy and I had the same personality that way. It's let's dance with the nature. Don't fight it.
Mm-hmm.
We just get the airplane going and we fly to a different spot.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave us so much leeway because there was no stress. We got 2 or 3 clients and we just changed in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
All of a sudden we're in a different spot. It was, but basically what it come down to is initially, first, let's say 5, 6 years, I did it because of the money, period. Because I've never been and never will be a trophy hunter. But I could make enough money to survive if I guided spring and fall. And then I was the one that convinced Sandy to cut it down to a small operation. And a lot of the clients were booking just for me. At that point, I can't quit.
Yeah.
And it was still mostly Europeans. I didn't want to. But when he decided to quit, I was definitely ready. It doesn't matter what you do it enough. It becomes normal and it's no longer exciting.
Mm-hmm.
That's all there is to it. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
And it reached that point.
Yeah.
I've got to do some amazing stuff that most people they can't even imagine.
Yeah.
All because of a very small group of very special people I met when I first got here. And, 2 of them are still alive. I'll do whatever I can to help them out. But I'm never guiding again. I would guide fishermen. some of my old clients that can legally come up and hunt moose or whatever, I would go hunt with them as a friend, but I'm never guiding again.
Yeah.
And I don't discourage. I even helped a young guy that I just met in the last few years get lined out and started guiding. It's a great experience for people that want to spend time in the bush. And one thing I will say is you should have a pretty good ability to get along with people. You know, I mean, if you're not a people person, you probably shouldn't guide no matter how good a hunter and woodsman you are.
Yeah.
You know, it's you're going to have upset clients. You know, if you're a good people person, you got a horrible situation. I've had situations where it snowed like crazy. The zipper went out of the tent. You know, got water in the tents. You have no choice. You got miles of swamp. I built rafts on tussocks, put tents on top of because the water's running through the tussocks. You know, I mean, if you're a good people person and you got empathy, you can imagine how horrible it is for them, even though I've lived through it a bunch of times. It's just, whatever to me.
Yeah.
They're dying.
Yeah. If
you can relate to that, you're going to make a good guide.
Yeah.
You know, but if your focus is just hunting and guns and trophies and stuff like that, and you're not a people person, probably really shouldn't be a guide. And the other thing I will say is it's a huge benefit if you're a guide, if you're in really good shape and you stay in really good shape. Because if you're in better shape than the client, you run the show. I've guided with guys that were in way worse shape than the clients, and the clients are disgusted. You know, they can outwalk them, they can whatever. So, you know, stay in shape, and you don't have to put it. Plus, you can take them out through the tussocks if they get sassy.
What would you say, I guess, just kind of in conclusion, your favorite story, whether it be a favorite hunt, a favorite situation, maybe just an outstanding story from being up here in Alaska over the years?
There's just so many.
Trapping, hunting, guiding, survival.
I don't know that there's one. I mean, there's been a whole bunch of them that, you know, are definitely memorable.
Yeah.
I guess one that is real memorable, and it was fun, is I had a client, German client, and Sandy was with us. We just had the one client. We had quite a long walk up a real shallow river to where we wanted to hunt, where we'd been able to land the airplane. And I'd been doing a tremendous amount of shooting that year, rapid fire, offhand bolt gun stuff. And I was really tuned in. And I just brought a 6.5 Swede because Sandy was there at 375, and the client had a 8 mag or something like that. And we were just shooting. And we made it all the way up the river. And then we had to go beyond where we wanted to be and got across because of a cut bank. And then we came backtracked ourselves about half a mile to where we wanted to be. And we'd already been on the ground for over 24 hours, so we were legal to shoot. And I wasn't even on the book because Sandy was guiding. I was just there. And it was early afternoon, and I was laying under a big spruce tree that I'd sat under hundreds of hours before with my Finnish Spitz curled up next to me. And I trained him not to bark for warning. He would just gently grab my hand. And I'm sleeping. And Sandy and the client there sitting over by a campfire, drinking coffee, waiting for, evening for moose hunting. And all of a sudden that dog's grabbing my hand. And I wake up and I look around and I look downriver, and here comes 11 wolves. And they're tracking us. They're literally walking in our boot prints, and I can see them a half mile down. And then they cross the river where we crossed, and they're coming through the willows in our tracks, with noses in our track, stopping, looking for us. And they got to come right by us. And I crawled back and I said, Hey, Sandy, look there. And there's a huge black. And I said, look at them. They're tracking us. He goes, God, they are. And I said, you got a wolf tag? And the client didn't. I said, I'm not on the books, right? And he goes, no, you're not guiding this year. I said, I think I'm going to shoot one. So I slipped back down again. I'm tuned in. I've been shooting a lot that year, and I was doing mostly offhand work. And I let him go by us. And then I shot the lead wolf and immediately shot 2 more right in front of us, 60, 75 yards across the creek. I could have shot probably 5, but I didn't want to ski anymore. But the reason that's so memorable is if we hadn't backtracked, we would have no idea that 11 wolves were literally walking in our tracks. Now, people often ask, especially when you're outside, do wolves ever attack people? Anybody that's been up here and talked to old timers will immediately see, yes. L. Wright was attacked. I know a whole bunch of people attacked. They all have guns. But if you don't have a gun, you ain't reporting that you got attacked because you ain't going to be there anymore. There ain't going to be nothing left. Now, most people in the bush in Alaska have a gun. I have a friend. He was guiding caribou hunt in the Brooks Range. Client was in the tent. They were done. He had to take a dump. He walks out into the tundra about 100 yards, let's say, from the tent. He squatted down, and something's right in front of him, and he looks, and it's a wolf peeking through the willows at him about 20 feet away. And he looks over. He's surrounded. He don't have a gun. He screams at the client. The client comes out of the tent. The client wears glasses, and he's not wearing them. He's screaming, shoot, shoot, shoot. And they're not running at him. They're just 6 wolves coming real slowly right at him within 25 feet. The client finally sees a blur. I guess the guy was screaming, just shoot in the air. And he shoots, and they didn't run off. They backed off. Would they have attacked? I don't know.
Hard to say, yeah.
They might have.
I think there was that story in Alaska's Wolfman, that book that Jim Reardon wrote about Frank Glazer. And there was a story in there kind of along those same lines about, are wolves ever aggressive towards humans? And of course, if you look at worldwide, there are plenty of stories like in Europe and Asia where there are fatal wolf attacks. And it's not unheard of.
Well, especially post-World War II in Russia.
Yeah. And then up here, you have isolated instances of wolf attacks.
Or encounters. Close encounters.
Right. But we don't hear a lot about it, right? Like, it's not like getting bit by a brown bear or ripped up by a black bear. That's far more common, right? And wolves are pretty intelligent animals. I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe them to be pretty intelligent.
I would say they're by far the most intelligent animal you're going to hunt in Alaska.
Extremely smart animals. And perhaps that's why we don't have as many encounters, because maybe they've had enough encounters, or maybe they realize that that's a bigger animal looking at us, or they don't need to mess with us. Whatever it is, there's something that is a disconnect between wolves attacking humans and bears encountering humans. There's just a defensive posture that bears seem to take up more often than wolves do. But that story in the Wolfman book, and I wish I could remember the chapter in the specific story about it, but there was an individual who was at, I believe, a cabin, and they found their remains, whether it was Frank or somebody else, and they found the person's remains at the cabin. I think it was on like the front porch or right out in the front yard, and it looked like that they had been partially consumed by wolves. And Frank, in the book, said that they were unsure that if the person had a stroke and died, and that the wolves just happened upon the body and consumed the remains, or if the wolves had actually ambushed, because obviously posthumously, and this is a long time before you were going to extract the body for an autopsy and things like that. But really, there's not a whole lot of stories about that. But have you ever personally had anything that would possibly be in that category?
Myself personally, I've never been in a single situation in the bush where it would have happened, because I always have a gun.
Yeah.
All summer, I have a gun. When I'm guiding, I have a gun. When I'm trapping, I have a gun.
But just like aggressive behavior, though.
Yeah, but how would you know? If I got a wolf at 50 yards that's giving me the evil eye and I shoot him in the head with 223, I don't know if he's going to attack or not.
Yeah.
I think that's the majority of the situations. If I wouldn't have a gun, nobody'd ever know it happened because wolves don't leave much for remains.
Yeah.
And by the time the shrews get through in the spring, it'd be hard to find any of my parka parts.
Yeah.
Do I consider it a priority for, watching out for aggressive wolves? For me personally, not at all, because I always have a dog.
Yeah.
But should you consider it, especially if you see a wolf following you or doing it? Yeah, you probably should.
Yeah.
I ain't going to sit around and worry about it.
Right.
But again, I don't have a lot of respect for people that go out in the bush without a firearm.
Yeah.
If they get eaten, well, that's nature.
Yeah.
It's kind of like people say, should I take pepper spray? And I said, heck yeah. It's good seasoning.
Yeah.
I mean, take something. Anything's better than nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
But, if you really want to spend a lot of time in the bush and you're not comfortable with the gun, you probably should go to northern Minnesota, not Alaska.
Yeah.
Go out in the woods where you don't get eaten.
Yeah.
Most people that are out in the bush, spend a lot of time. And I'm not talking village stuff. I'm talking bush stuff.
Right.
Every single one of them has encounters. I don't care who you are. If you're out long enough, the odds are so high, you're going to have an encounter. If you're prepared, it's usually not a big issue. If you're not, it's going to be a bad situation. And, owning a firearm is not being prepared.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're not willing to devote a lot of time to practicing, carry a shotgun. And even then, and again, I'm a very good shot with a handgun. I get lazy and carry a handgun. I don't do it because I feel fully armed to face a charging grizzly bear. It's because I'm carrying a 120-pound moose ham through Tussocks.
Yeah.
And it's my third trip of the day, and I'm lazy, so I got my revolver, and I don't have my shotgun or rifle in my hand.
Yeah.
But it's a false sense of security, just like bear spray or bells or whatever.
Yeah.
I got one in the truck right now. I tell people, if you're not comfortable with a gun, but you want something that will defend you, buy a 12-gauge bang stick. Shark bang stick. Put it on a good walking stick. It's 100% guaranteed if you have to use it. And nobody's going to say, when you punch a bear in the nose with the 12-gauge shell, physically punch him in the nose with a stick, DNR isn't going to say, you could have had options. You didn't have to kill this bear. And I've tested this thing on pig skulls and a whole bunch of stuff. And a 12-gauge buckshot out of a bang stick will blow their heads off. Do I want to have to ever use it? No. But at least it's better than bear spray. I can use it into the wind.
Right. And so that is operated. I mean, just for folks that might not be familiar with what a bang stick is, go ahead and
just a stainless steel. It's 2 pipes that sleeve, 3/4 inch ID for the one that 12-gauge shell puts in. And there's a firing pin in the bottom of the outside, and there's a retaining pin that you have to pull. And the only way it can go off is if you punch that against the target. There's no other way to make it go off. It has an O-ring, so it can't fall out. The commercials do. I put mine on a steel pipe so I can use it for a walking stick. I occasionally take the dogs for a walk in the spring when the moose are calving. People are uncomfortable if they see me carrying a handgun or whatever. This thing, I'm carrying it, they don't know I have it. Spray paint it pink, they don't know. But if I have to use it, nobody can say I didn't need to.
Right.
And it will do the job if I can stay focused and hit my target. It will literally just blow chunks off. Because you're getting not only the pellets, but you're getting the gas.
Right. Getting the actual charge.
It's devastating.
I'll bet.
And it's, I don't know, I think mine's several years old, but I think it was shipping. It was less than $100, and it's not a firearm, so anybody can order one through the mail. And what the other thing is, I use it. I can unscrew it off my walking stick and have it in the tent with me. And I got handgun, probably a rifle in the tent with me. A bear jumps on your tent. What good is a handgun or a rifle or shotgun or whatever? How are you going to shoot them? They're standing on you with a tent between you and them. The bang stick, all I got to do is pick it up and slap them with it. Might not be the right spot, but I guarantee you, at least I'll get their attention for a minute, and I might be able to get one of my other. But I've seen a bear jump. It was my tent. We were coming off a hill back to camp, and a big grizzly walked up, looked right at my cute little Browning bicycle tent, and jumped right on top of it. And I'm like, whoa. And he just stood there, laying on his belly on top of my tent, kind of looked around, got up, broke all the poles, didn't wreck the fly at all, and just walked away. Didn't mess with camp, nothing, just belly flopped my tent. And I'm thinking, I was probably half mile away uphill looking at it, and clients beside me, and I go, glad we weren't in there taking a nap. I mean, and that's what made me buy the bang stick.
Yeah.
It's like, you ain't shooting them. Mm-hmm. And he owned me, even though I was a half mile away. I mean, I felt owned. And so I ordered a Bud's bang stick, and it's in the truck right now. I mean, definitely last choice, but it's an option.
Yeah.
And if you want to be sporting, hunt with it.
Oh, that's funny. Well, just real briefly here, you mentioned earlier talking about a client that had the wrong gear for the hunt, right? You mentioned that you had Primaloft.
Mm-hmm. It's the only thing I trust.
Yeah. And so Primaloft insulation, for folks who aren't aware, is synthetic fill insulation. Mm-hmm. It's warm when wet. It'll dry you off. When you're wet, it'll wick the moisture off of your body. It's been well documented and well used, and it's by far and away the most popular insulation for those that are experienced in the backcountry, especially in wet environments. And believe it or not, even though our winters are long and cold up here and dry in the wintertime, we get a lot of moisture spring, summer, and fall, especially during hunting season. It rains nonstop, it seems like, as soon as you try to go brown bear hunting. And every moose season, I know this moose season was just as wet as I remember it. Yep. Spent the second half of September in rubber Helly Hansen rain gear.
Yeah.
Which is not always my favorite, but it keeps you dry.
I trust it.
It keeps you dry.
We talked about a couple weeks ago, my sheep hunt.
Yeah.
Last couple days just soaked.
Yep.
Well, one thing, I was fortunate, Big Ray's and a couple other outfits in town years ago used to have deals set up with outfitters to test new things. And this was when a lot of stuff was new. Mm-hmm. And my friend John, he had Mountain Sports. It was best little outdoor shop in Fairbanks, but he couldn't make a living. His quality was too high, and there's just not consumer demand for the best stuff. So I had the very first Primaloft integral design bag in Fairbanks. He'd custom ordered it. And it was a half zip. I still got it. Mm-hmm. It wads up this big. It's rated to 20 above. And I love half zip. Even when I buy a brand new sleeping bag, I immediately sew the zipper up half zip. Always. Because at 30 below zero, if your zipper blows out and you don't have a pocket full of safety pins, which I always do, any day of the year, I got safety pins in my pocket. But if you don't have that, at least with a half zip, you can halfway stay warm. Mm-hmm. But yeah. One of my clients bought me that bag way back in the 90s from John. Integral Design was the only one using Primaloft, period. There was nobody else. They were a Canadian company. It was expensive, but it was good gear. And I also got a pullover jacket and pants. I still have the pants. Well, I had 2 pair, but I have both pair. And I would sleep in them on sheep hunts. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't even take a sleeping bag. I would just take Primaloft jacket, pants, and a bivvy.
Yeah.
And I just tucked the sleeves inside and pulled the coat over so it was like that. And I have fairly small feet, so I wear cheap, really big, uninsulated hip boots with full felt liners. Year round, summer, whatever. And I take 2 pairs so one gets wet, I can take them out and swap them out.
Yeah. But
I can sleep in those felt liners. And I hate packing stuff I don't need. So many, many sheep hunts, I just slept in Primaloft. But that little sleeping bag didn't weigh anything either, and I trust it with my life. I've slept in it completely soaking wet at 35, 38 degrees. I wasn't loving life, but I was warm. I wasn't hypothermic, and I had clients next to me with other fills, especially down, that were dying.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'd have to swap every hour, let them use my bag, which I hate doing, or boil water and put it in in canteens or whatever, so they got hot water bottles in their bag. But Primaloft, there potentially could be better fills today. I don't know. I never researched beyond Primaloft. I trust it. That's where I stay with. I find it hard to find now, but my old stuff, I just refuse to give up on it. I don't care if I have Primaloft integral design sleeping bags rated to 20 below, but they're actually truly probably more like 40 below because I've used them in those conditions. Whatever happens to those bags, I will fix it, short of burning up in a fire. I don't know that I can replace them with something better. Maybe there is. I don't know. But when I look at the price of a new high-quality sleeping bag, I don't want to experiment.
Yeah.
Now, like the puppy suits, the military Army surplus puppy suits, the pants and tops are Primaloft. I live in them. You know, I look like a hobo fell out of a dumpster behind an Army surplus, but I don't care because I trust it. But I would say on any given hunt, I don't care the time of year or whatever, the best single thing you can purchase beyond your gun, your binoculars, your scope, whatever, to ensure that you have a good hunt is a good sleeping bag. And boots. Get the best light. That's the other thing cracks me up. This is a huge pet peeve of mine, but people are always buying super ultra light rifles. Drives me nuts. I mean, first of all, they're way harder to shoot.
Yeah.
They cost way more. I remember when ultralight rifle come out. It was like insanely lightweight rifle. I think they were biggest caliber they came in was like a 280, but still kicked like a mule. But you saved like 2.5 pounds, 3 pounds in your hand or on your shoulder. You want to really make a difference on a sheep hunt or a walking expedition? Buy the best lightweight boots you can buy. You take the weight off your feet, it's huge compared to a couple pounds in your hand.
Yeah.
And if you're really that much of a sissy, you should exercise before you go hunting. Carry a 5-pound dumbbell and go for a walk.
Right.
But it's another gimmick like camouflage that people, they suck it up,
Yeah.
And a lot of people make a lot of money off it.
Yeah.
I wish I was one of them. But my idea of good camouflage is 3 big broken natural colors. Brown pants, green shirt, gray vest. Works great for animals, better than anything else.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sell.
Yeah.
Moose don't buy camouflage.
Right.
I make my own custom camouflage. It's the best, fall moose hunting camo. Anybody can do it. You can do it. Anybody can. It's the best, bar none, for impressing people. You just take a digital camera, walk out in the woods, and take a picture of exactly the environment you're going to hunt in. There's a company in California will transfer that to any fabric you so desire and get a coat made. There's 3 I've had made that are of willow bushes when the leaves are turning yellow. And I swear, you can even see the blueberries, the quality of the photograph, so good. It's the most beautiful camouflage you stand behind a willow bush and you're gone except your face. Works great for people. I don't hunt people. Not anymore. But if you want the best camouflage you can get, do that. If you hunt in black spruce, go out, take a picture. Send it to California, and it's not cheap, but you will get the best camouflage you can get.
Yeah.
And you could have 10 different sets if you hunt in 10 different environments. I tell my buddies that deer hunt out of tree stands in Iowa, go out to your tree stand, stand in the middle of the trail where you think you got a good shot at a deer, look up your tree stand, take a picture, and have camouflage made of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can do it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You certainly can.
But you don't need it.
Yeah. The best camouflage is patience and play in the wind.
Wind,
Yeah.
movement, shine.
Yep. Absolutely.
But it doesn't sell.
No, you're right. It's not flashy. Well, Tom, I appreciate you coming on and just
Yeah, it was fun.
telling some stories. I appreciate it. I enjoy listening to hunting stories. You did a great job.
Well, it was fun. I haven't got to tell them for a while. Everybody I know has heard them before.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to have you back on at some point and focus on some more specific topics, perhaps. Sure, we could do it all night long at some point. But, well, folks, if you enjoy the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on, please leave a 5-star rating and a written review for the show. I would appreciate that, as would Mariah. That's the best thing you can do to help us grow the podcast. And thanks for listening this week, and we'll see you next time.